is Russian forces do plan to encircle the city. Here in Paris, a standing ovation at the French Parliament in solidarity with Ukraine. The Prime Minister, Jean Castex, accuses Vladimir Putin of lying to his people and to the world. And an emotionally charged speech to the European Parliament, meanwhile. Speaking from the Ukrainian capital, President Volodymyr Zelensky told lawmakers, "Prove you are with Ukraine," just one day after he requested his country join the EU. Thanks for joining us here on France 24. I'm Nadia Massey in Paris. And we start then with what is happening on the ground today in Ukraine, where this afternoon people are bracing for a major assault on their capital, Kyiv. Satellite imagery shows Russian tanks are approaching the city from the north. It is a vast convoy stretching around 60 kilometres. Now, American intelligence suggests that Russian forces will attempt to encircle the city. To discuss that, France 24's Philip Turl is with me here in the studio. And Philip, what is your understanding as we look at those images of what the Russian military strategy now is?
Well, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, Nadia, but if you think back a couple of weeks where we saw this building up of forces along the border with Ukraine and into Belarus, and many people were saying, well, I don't think President Putin is really going to launch an invasion of Ukraine. He's trying to intimidate the Ukrainian authorities. The bottom line here is that if you are building up forces like that and massing them along the border, then you intend to use them. And that is what President Putin has done. So we've seen this long line, which is much longer than was originally thought, of tanks and armoured vehicles, 60 kilometres long, on the way to Kiev. So I don't think this is an intimidation tactic by President Putin. I think President Putin intends to use that military arsenal. Now, there's two things he can do. The first thing is he can try to get into the city, to try to take control, try to also get rid of the government, either kill or take captive Volodymyr Zelensky. He's the man that Vladimir Putin wants to get rid of. And that is, I think, his plan. He can try to do that. But the problem with that is that he has got to keep Russian public opinion on his side. Ukrainians are seen as being the brothers of the Russians. So if Vladimir Putin were to send in the tanks and kill thousands of Ukrainians, that is obviously going to show the Russian public, if they ever get to see the images, that they're not. And that will contradict everything that he's been saying as a reason for this invasion of Ukraine. So that's the first point. So the second point is, what else could they do? Well, they could encircle Kiev. They may just try to do that. And why is that dangerous? Well, that is dangerous because the people of Kiev will not be able to get supplies, won't be able to get out of the city, and that will mean that there will be a siege, which we've seen. It's a medieval way of declaring war on the aggressor. We saw it during the Second World War, and that will lead to a very, very difficult situation for Ukrainians in the city, and possibly even to starvation and people not being able to get enough food, heat, water, all sorts of supplies.
Yeah, and that will sound familiar to anybody who remembers what happened in Syria as well back in 2015 there, Philip. There's also been more talk, also extremely alarming, from Vladimir Putin, that he's putting Russia's nuclear forces on high alert. How should we understand that in the context of what we're seeing?
It's difficult to know what is happening in Vladimir Putin's mind. We've had these discussions on the border with Belarus between the two sides, between the Ukrainians and the Russians. There have been bits coming out of these talks that, yes, maybe there has been progress on one or two issues, but every time we have these talks, Vladimir Putin ups the stakes. And now there's a new element in what Vladimir Putin has been saying, and that is, okay, I want a demilitarization of Ukraine. I want the Nazi government of Volodymyr Zelensky gone. And what I also want, and what has to be on the agenda, is that Crimea has got to be an integral part of Russia and everybody has to agree to that. Well, he knows that the West is not going to agree to that. So Vladimir Putin is finding two things. He's finding an increased opposition from the West against him, and he's also finding that taking over Ukraine is much more complicated, I think, than he originally thought when he launched this invasion last week, thinking it would be as easy as in 2014 when he went into Donbass and when he took Crimea. But that means that he is becoming increasingly annoyed about the situation. And so going forward and saying, if you don't do what I want, I could launch a nuclear attack, is a way of showing the West that he's frustrated. But as we don't know what Vladimir Putin thinks and how he's going to react, then that means that he could do it in the long run. But for the moment, we really don't know what's going on in his mind.
Philip Tell, thank you very much for your analysis. Well, President Zelensky of Ukraine has said the West should consider imposing a no-fly zone over his country to prevent Russian attacks from the sky. It is an idea that so far is being rejected in Washington because it could trigger a direct conflict between Russian and American forces. Zelensky, though, argues that the West must do what it can to stop Russia immediately, adding Moscow was simply not serious about peace talks. Have a listen.
Сьогодні за ініціативою російської сторони відбувся перший раунд переговорів між Україною і Росією. Ці переговори відбувалися на фоні бомбардування та обстрілів нашої території, обстрілів наших міст. Було видно синхронізацію обстрілів з переговорним процесом. Я вважаю, що таким нехитрим способом Росія намагається тиснути. Не втрачайте час. Тактику таку ми не сприймаємо. Справедливі переговори можуть бути тоді, коли одна сторона не б'є по іншій стороні реактивною артилерією. Саме у момент переговорів. Зло, озброєне ракетами, бомбами, артилерією треба зупинити негайно. Знищити економічно, показати, що людяність уміє себе захищати. Я вважаю, що треба розглядати повне закриття неба для російських ракет, літаків, гвинтокрилів.
Well, let's discuss the possibility of a no-fly zone now over Ukraine with France 24's Mark Perelman, who's with me. Mark, there is some support for this in Europe, but overall there is concern of the risks of a no-fly zone. Talk to us a bit about why countries are so reticent.
Well, there is support even within Ukraine. You had the former president and the former prime minister we had on air who said the same thing, that this was really the game changer, that if there was a no-fly zone over Ukraine, this would definitely protect the country. Some countries in the Baltic states, for instance, the prime minister of Estonia told me that she was in favor of such a no-fly zone over Ukraine. However, the problem is that most of the other allies and the main allies, starting with the US, are absolutely against it. The White House spokesperson yesterday said it very clearly. We're not going into Ukraine because a no-fly zone would essentially mean going into Ukraine, because a no-fly zone, you cannot just declare it. You have to enforce it. And the only way to enforce it is to prevent Russian planes from flying in Ukraine. And effectively, this means war with Russia. And we just heard the French Prime Minister just a few minutes ago said France is not going to war in Ukraine. If there is an attempt by Russia to enter a NATO state, then it's different. But clearly, there is a willingness by the key Western allies not to go there. They've done so in the past, it's true, in Iraq back in the early 1990s, in Libya in 2011, in the former Yugoslavia, in Bosnia also in the 1990s, but those were very different times, and especially the enemy was not as potent as Russia. And sadly for the Ukrainians, sadly maybe for Volodymyr Zelensky, unless something really terrible happens in Ukraine, like massive killings and so on, it's very unlikely that the Western powers will enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine, because it's simply not realistic to go to war with such a superpower as Russia.
Mark Paraman, thank you very much indeed. Well, we can speak now on the programme to Oleksiy Mutsky. He's a law student currently in the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. Thank you very much indeed for finding the time to talk to us today here on France 24. Just tell us a bit about where you are and give us a sense of what your daily life looks like right now.
Hello, thank you very much. As for me, as it was said, I am currently in the northern part of Ukraine, the city of Chernihiv, which is not so far away from Kiev, but it's also very close to Belarusian frontier. And unfortunately, Russian armies, together with Belarusian, attack our city. Yesterday night, we had a very heavy bombing of the district where I live. Several apartments were burnt, and in my home, several windows were damaged. In the hallway, it's very cold right now because there is no glass at all. The city is blocked. There are mines all around the city, and it's impossible to get out.
And we see you now, though, on Skype. Are you in your apartment right now? You know, you say that windows have been broken in your apartment. Do you feel safe staying where you are?
No, the windows are not broken in my apartment exactly, but in the hallway of my house. And now I can hear the siren, so basically it means that I need to hide.
Do go.
Basement.
Do not stay with us if you feel unsafe. Are you able to go underground?
Excuse me?
Are you able to go underground now?
Yes.
As I said, please do go if you feel unsafe, sir. We don't want you to stay just to speak to us.
Okay, so thank you very much.
All right, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you for talking to us. Oleksiy Mutsky there was speaking to us there, but he heard air raid sirens in the background of the northern city that he was in. That's the city of Chernihiv. We hope very much that he is safe. We'll keep an eye on developments coming out of that city in the north for you during the afternoon. Well, let's move on, though, to what's been happening here in France, where there have been moving scenes at the French Parliament today. MPs stood up with a standing ovation for the president, Volodymyr Zelensky, and the Ukrainian people. You can hear some of that applause there. The French Prime Minister, Jean Castex, then went on to pile criticism on Vladimir Putin. Have a listen to what he had to say.
Vladimir Putin a menti.
Vladimir Putin has lied. He has lied to President Macron. He has lied to the international community. He has lied to his own people. No genocide has taken place targeting the Russian-speaking population of Donbass. There are no nuclear weapons on Ukrainian territory. No, Mr. Zelensky is not the leader of a Nazi regime.
Well, it's not just the French Parliament that's been holding an emergency debate today. EU lawmakers have also been holding an emergency session of their own. The European Union has already taken unprecedented steps to sanction Russia and to support Ukraine. That includes financing weapons for Ukrainian forces. Today, though, stronger sanctions are expected to be discussed. The Ukrainian leader addressed that EU meeting via video link from Kyiv. Have a listen to what he had to say.
We are fighting for survival, and this is the highest of our motivation. But we are fighting also to be equal members of Europe. I believe that today we are showing everybody that's exactly what we are. The European Union is going to be much stronger with us, that's for sure.
Well, it's time for a break from us here in the newsroom at France 24. Thank you for watching. Do stay with us. There'll be more news and analysis here very shortly.
As the conflict in Ukraine continues, many cultural institutions and artists abroad have used their platforms to show solidarity with Ukrainians, calling out the Russian invasion of the country at high-profile award ceremonies and cancelling Russian performances and productions in cities like Paris, New York and London. And for Ukrainians, life and work has been put on hold. The country's participation in the upcoming Venice Biennale is currently hanging in the balance as artist Pavlo Makov is sheltering in Kharkiv, unable to continue preparing his installation for the Ukrainian pavilion. Pavlov joins us on the line to tell us more. Hi, and thanks for being with us. First, can you just tell us about where you are and how things are there?
Well, I'm in Kharkiv. This is the second big city of Ukraine, only 25 kilometers away from the Russian border, and there's quite a big battlefields all around the city, and the city is regularly bombed, unfortunately regularly and very severely bombed by the Russian troops. Just today morning, they put the bomb from the aircraft right in the center of the city. We are very close in the shelter. They wanted to destroy the main house for the administration, the main administration house, of the region, not of the city, not the municipality, but the administration house of the city. So they didn't succeed to destroy the house, but of course there was a huge explosion and some people were killed.
Now we're very glad that you're staying safe, of course, given those tense circumstances.
More or less safe, yeah. More or less safe.
And I know that for everyone there, life has ground to a halt, work has ground to a halt. You were preparing your contribution to this year's Biennale, which opens in late April in Venice. How likely is it that you'll be able to participate?
Well, this is my project, but the project is run also by three curators. This is Maria Lanko, Elizaveta German, and Boris Filoyenko. And as far as I know, Maria Lanko managed the second day of the war, put the core, the heart of the project, this is 78 bronze funnels for the fountain, into her car, and she's now in Poland. And I think we will participate. The fact that I will be in Venice is, I'm very much doubt.
And indeed, having explained a little about that project, I believe that the artwork makes reference to your 1995 piece, which reflects on post-Soviet society. How does it feel 30 years on, thinking about what's changed in that time period?
This fountain was it was kind of my reaction towards the absence of vitality in the society in the middle of 90s, which was here, and it was really post-Soviet situation. But during these 27 years, the life has been seriously changed here, positively changed in Ukraine in a good way. And then all of a sudden, the situation in the world, from my point of view, has been changing rapidly in the last 10 years, extremely rapidly. And it was basically changing into the direction of exhaustion. Not just from point of view of exhaustion of nature, exhaustion of surroundings. It was also about exhaustion of our kind of mental situation, because we now are living in the world of fake politics, fake news, fake food, fake clothes. People are buying clothes only to show them on the internet. I'm a little bit even angry about this. We are in war for 8 years. We already lost before the February 24. We lost already 15,000 soldiers, boys and girls on our front, and it's the best part of the nation. And somehow, only with this big war, somehow everybody woke up, oh my God, when they realized that basically this war concerns also to Europe and the United States, basically to the Western world, to the world of so-called democracy.
Indeed, you mentioned the beginning of the conflict there in Crimea, specifically in 2014, and I believe at the time you sold artwork donating the funds of that to the Ukrainian defense efforts. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, but this was a normal practice, from time to time, once or twice a year, we were making, not artists, but, the organizers, the volunteers who were organizing charity auctions, and the money was going to the army or was going to the military medical system, for example. As an example, I can give you one. It was in Kharkov, I think 3 years ago, when the paramedics from the front, they came and they wanted to reach about $5,000 from selling art to get some new equipment to the car. And in one evening, this auction, it was sold for $50,000, and they could buy another second new car, medical car for them, to help people on the front. So that was kind of, and it happened just once or twice in Kiev, in Kharkiv, in Lviv, in different, not just only in Kharkiv, in some different places in Ukraine.
In recent days, we've